Last time I talked about Transformers Prime Starscream was more than a year ago, my first video recorded on a phone with a completely different voice. Starscream is always popular but controversial, and many might wonder what I'm doing, claiming that Starscream is a better leader than Megatron. That happens when we go into this branding Starscream as a cowardly failure without really thinking about it. First things first, we need to recognize that not all Starscreams are equal. Some really are power-hungry with no experience or idea of how leadership works. I want to talk specifically about Transformers Prime Starscream, because he has the skills to be a better leader than Megatron. Now, I'm not saying Starscream is the best leader for Cybertron. Someone like Optimus is obviously better than Starscream because Optimus respects alien life forms. Cybertron under Starscream's rule may struggle with intergalactic relationships and trading. However, Starscream is a much more stable and relaxed leader than Megatron. Other Cybertronians should actually want Starscream to take over the Decepticons, but I will explain why no one is supporting him. Now here are the reasons why Starscream would make a good leader for the Decepticons or Cybertron. Starscream has actual past experience as a military leader, leading thousands of Seekers for at least thousands of years. They functioned perfectly fine under his command, and they were so skilled and deadly that this is why Megatron wanted to have Starscream in his ranks. Starscream is described as a popular leader among the Seekers in the novels, and the majority of Seekers sided with the Decepticons when he did. When other Seekers were around before Transformers Prime, Megatron could not push Starscream around too much because he knew how the Seekers would support him. Might I add that Starscream respects his duties and can hold classified information from the public, as he did with the Seeker of Dark Energon on Trypticon Station. He and the Seekers guarded it until Megatron came to the station himself and forced him to give it up. Starscream is not intrinsically hostile and only becomes aggressive when he feels threatened. Starscream has the special ability to work with bots he does not like, which many Autobots are not even able to do. Starscream does not hold many grudges, surprisingly. He does not bring up blows in battles, and he is willing to speak with and work with bots that tried to kill him. He manages to function with Megatron despite beatings. He does not treat RC with hatred despite the fact she tried to slit his throat. He doesn't ever show anger again as Shockwave about him trying to impale his eye. He lives with him later on and acts as though the rivalry never happened. Starscream is highly adaptable, and that can be a very good quality when making treaties or deals. Starscream, despite being a Decepticon, finds it easy to get casual with the Autobots. His reaction depends on how everyone enters the scene, and if Starscream is encountered, he'll even put away his weapons if the other Autobot remains non-hostile. Megatron, on the other hand, he would never stop until everyone who opposed him was dead. Megatron is not willing to end the war until he kills Optimus, but Starscream is willing to throw away all hostilities if everyone simply acknowledges him as leader. He has a huge ego that demands attention, but that is nowhere near as damaging as a Decepticon leader who refuses to stop the long years of suffering and death.
I would be willing to consider a truce, if you would be willing to bow before me, Optimus Prime.
If Optimus agreed to let Starscream rule, they would all return to Cybertron and Starscream would stop trying to kill Team Prime. It's ridiculous, but so simple. That demonstrates that Starscream does not do fighting for the sake of fighting. Starscream is narcissistic, but Megatron is simply mentally unstable. You ever wonder why Decepticons are on Earth when the Autobots have no space bridge or way off the planet? Wouldn't it be easy to fly back to Cybertron and conquer it, strengthening the defenses so the Autobots could not defeat them when they returned? The Decepticons are still on Earth because Megatron is obsessed with Optimus. In the novels and the show, Megatron follows Optimus wherever he goes because he wants to kill him with his own hands. It is illogical. It would be easier to win the war if he let anyone kill Optimus, but he flips out if Starscream so much as tries to kill Optimus on his own.
I only wanted you to be rid of Optimus.
No one rids me of Optimus Prime but me. Do you understand? Do you?
Megatron was driven by a desire for revenge ever since the High Council named Orion Pax as Prime over him. Megatron can't be reasoned with, and he won't actually do what is best for the Decepticon cause. Starscream, on the other hand, has actual forward-thinking goals. You will notice throughout the show that Starscream is an Energon hoarder. This is important because Energon is in limited supply, and it is also essential to keeping your army powerful and healthy. In the years Megatron left Starscream in charge, everything went perfectly. If that is not a demonstration that Starscream can handle the responsibility, I don't know what is. Starscream kept out of sight, collected a massive pile of Energon, and might I add that Starscream even killed one of the few Autobots on Earth. Then, when Megatron seems to have died and Starscream takes over, he rapidly sets goals and makes plans, creatively using assets that Megatron did not. Starscream's plans are actually really good, although it is trendy to say that Starscream always fails. Usually it's just terrible luck or someone else's fault. But come on, so many other characters have plans that fail, and it isn't fair to only critique Starscream. Megatron is a goof who let a little Autobot take something right out of his hand twice. We were only quick to single out Starscream as a failure because Megatron called him one, so we take his word for it. But Megatron's mean, and by listening to him, we're ignoring how often other characters mess up, even more than Starscream does. Here are some examples of Starscream's creativity and rapid planning. He awakens a warrior that for some reason Megatron never looked for. He captures an Autobot and replaces him with a shapeshifter. Starscream was so insanely close to locating the Autobot's base a season and a half before the Decepticons finally do it. It was Makeshift's fault that he got found out, maybe this Viacon's fault for letting Wheeljack trick him, maybe Soundwave's fault for not letting Starscream kill Wheeljack. Starscream almost offed 2 Autobots in the first few episodes. Twice, Starscream tries new ways to gather more Energon for the Decepticons. What does Megatron do? Megatron spends so many episodes standing around until others offer him ideas or relics appear. He's rarely an actor. Soundwave, Shockwave, Starscream, and even Silas give him ideas. Megatron's most creative moment was cutting off a Prime's arm so that he could use the hammer to make the Dark Star Saber. But what for? Oh, to kill Optimus, of course. Starscream thinks of the future more than others, which is why he vacated an Energon mine beforehand to keep a secret stash for himself in case of emergency. And lo and behold, Starscream does have to scavenge for Energon in the future, checking all abandoned mines for scraps. Starscream is a bot who is prepared for the worst. He's also super resourceful and makes the most out of terrible situations. Only Starscream could gather random tools and put together a brilliant plan. Starscream's shining moment is when he abuses the Autobots' expectations that they could trade with him. He feigns not knowing what the keys are for. He plants a dead clone, but not before harvesting his organ for him to use later. He consumes red Energon to sprint through their ground bridge portal and steal all the keys. Then he escapes with a remote-controlled ground bridge. It's moments like these that prove why Megatron keeps him around. Starscream lost the Apex armor, but was not put down. He adapted and used his new tool, the red Energon, perfectly in 2 situations. His clones got killed, but he used the body left behind to its full potential. We may laugh and think him using a scooter is pathetic, but as someone who cannot fly, and who has to conserve energy because he's basically starving, using the scooter is in fact the smart choice. Starscream legitimately has Cybertron's well-being in mind. Back when Cybertron was rotting under the caste system, he still wanted change for Cybertron to be glorious again. He wanted to reactivate the space bridges so they could reach out to the stars again. He actually wanted to be a Prime himself, surprise surprise. In Transformers Prime, Starscream egotistically wants to rule over Cybertron, but he's seriously excited about the idea of reviving it. Megatron's primary goal, on the other hand, is to attack another planet, and Megatron's desire to conquer Earth only arises when he learns that Unicron is at Earth's center. He wants to rule over both Primus and Unicron because, like I said, Megatron is actually crazy. You don't have that problem with Starscream because he isn't on purple drugs 24/7, living just to spite Optimus until he kills him. Next, Starscream is rightfully cautious. What we fans call cowardice is often real intelligent choices he is making. Is Starscream a coward for not using Dark Energon on himself until he knew what it did? Is it cowardly to not consume random forest berries, especially if you know the berries were made by Satan? Megatron is legitimately crazy and stupid for shanking himself in the heart with Unicron's blood, and he is lucky it gave him powers instead of giving him radiation poisoning or something. Starscream, contrary to common belief, is not opposed to fighting. He isn't even a bad fighter. When he is flying, he does well. Starscream is not a blindly loyal soldier who throws himself to his death by fighting more Autobots than he can handle. He isn't stupid. Why would Starscream stick around in this situation when he knows he can't take all of them? Of course he would be scared and flee. I mean, if I had one gun and 3 others were pointed at me, I wouldn't stick around. And Starscream is not pathetic or cowardly to fear and grovel around Megatron. You can't really understand until you put it into human terms. If you imagine a big hulking guy who carries a cannon, who beats you and throws you across the room, who is threatened to shoot you in the face, who has hospitalized you by beating you nearly to death. When we meet people who have been scarred or traumatized by violent people like that, we do not call them pathetic when they are afraid and try to avoid getting hurt. Normally we call them abuse victims and we respect their dignity. It's just hard to do that when we look at cartoon robots, but when we do character analysis, we have to keep in mind that their universe is real to them. If Megatron started treating anyone else the same way, they would also adopt Starscream's fearful behaviors. It is not a fault in his character, and it does not affect his leadership skills once Megatron is absent. Since he is not an oppressive brute because he is unable to be one, that is a good thing. Starscream has to and has asked for crew support in making decisions. Starscream lacks Megatron's physical strength, and he requires genuine respect and support. If he pushed too far, the Vehicons would flat out reject him. He has to tread carefully and please Soundwave and the Vehicons. He cannot physically beat up Knockout because it would be so unacceptable to break down and everyone who actually wants a doctor. Starscream finds it humorous and punishment enough just to mess up his appearance. Starscream is better because it is scary to have a huge buff leader who can break you in half and who is far more willing to. The worst you can get from Starscream is a frustrated bitch slap because it isn't in his power or interests to hospitalize his crew members. Starscream beats Megatron as the better Decepticon leader for both Autobots and Decepticons because he is much less of a physical threat. Starscream has the rule of intelligence, not strength, and when you think about Earth, we don't just elect the strongest people, right? That's just an animalistic way to rule. Dare I say, a Predacon way to rule. Being a leader requires intelligence, so even the physically weakest, the oldest, frailest people could be the absolute best. Starscream struggles for respect not because he isn't worthy of it, but because of Decepticon toxic loyalty. Megatron was one of the oppressed slaves and gladiators. He inspired his fellows to rise up and change the world. They love him because he was one of them. Megatron's goals strayed far, and although he is no longer acting in their interests, no one can see it because their love is too strong. His story is just too inspirational. Starscream was not one of the oppressed, he was a military leader who joined them later. They see Megatron as the Decepticon cause, and without him, they are lost. Starscream has the Sway bots who were cloned and raised to believe in Megatron's doctrine. Even if he is more stable and forward-thinking than Megatron, no one sees it because they cannot see Megatron's flaws.